The bright morning sun streamed through the windows of the Pentagon as Lieutenant Daniel Carter straightened his Navy uniform. His hands trembled slightly as he walked down the long corridor. Just 3 days ago, the world had changed forever when massive alien ships appeared in Earth's orbit. The aliens called themselves the Concordat, a federation of 15 different species who had mastered faster-than-light travel centuries ago. Their arrival sent waves of both fear and excitement through Earth's population. But what happened next surprised everyone. They specifically asked to meet with Earth's military leaders. Daniel wasn't supposed to be here. As a 32-year-old tactical officer, he should have been on his ship, but during the first contact, he had done something remarkable. While monitoring the approaching alien vessels, he had correctly predicted their formation changes and movement patterns, something that caught the Concordat's attention. "Lieutenant Carter, please come in," called General Linda Morris, waving him into the conference room. Inside, 3 alien beings sat at the table. A tall, slender creature with silvery skin, a stocky reptilian being, and what appeared to be a floating cloud of purple gas contained within a transparent shell. The silvery being spoke through a translator device. "Lieutenant, we have been studying your species since we first detected your radio signals 50 years ago. But what we discovered was unexpected." Lisa Bennett, a young scientist from NASA, sat in a corner taking notes. Her brown hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity behind her glasses. She had been brought in to help understand the scientific implications of what the Concordat was about to reveal. "Your species," continued the alien, "possesses unique neural patterns we have never encountered before. Your brains process spatial combat awareness in ways that seem impossible to us." The reptilian alien nodded. "In our simulations, humans consistently outperform all known species in warfare scenarios. Your natural instincts for combat strategy are extraordinary." Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "But we're not just warriors. We're explorers, scientists, artists." The gaseous being's translator crackled. "Of course. But you don't understand. What takes our best military minds years to learn, your species seems to grasp instinctively. Your children's video games are more complex than some of our species' military training programs." Lisa raised her hand. "Are you saying humans are naturally better at fighting than your species?" "Not just better," the silvery being replied. "Based on our studies, you're exceptional. Your ability to process multiple combat scenarios simultaneously, predict enemy movements, and adapt to new tactical situations is unprecedented." Over the next few hours, the aliens showed them data comparing human neural responses to those of other species. During combat situations, human brains lit up in patterns that the Concordat had never seen before. Even civilian humans showed these patterns when playing strategy games or solving spatial puzzles. The meeting was interrupted by urgent news. The Concordat representatives received a message that made their various alien features darken with concern. The silvery being turned to General Morris. "We didn't just come here to share this information. We came because we need your help. A species called the Vorax has begun aggressive expansion into our space. They don't negotiate. They don't trade. They only conquer." Daniel felt his heart rate increase. "You want us to fight for you?" "We want an alliance," the reptilian being corrected. "Our technology, combined with your natural combat abilities, could be the key to stopping the Vorax before they destroy everything in their path." Lisa spoke up from her corner. "But we're still new to space travel. We've barely left our solar system." The gaseous being rippled. "We can help with that. We're willing to share our technology, help you advance centuries ahead of where you are now. In return, we need your military insight, your strategic abilities, and eventually, your help in defending the galaxy." General Morris stood up, her face serious. "This is a huge decision. We'll need to discuss this with our world leaders." "Of course," the silvery being said. "But please understand, time is short. The Vorax are moving faster than we anticipated." As the meeting ended, Daniel caught up with Lisa in the hallway. She was still scribbling notes frantically. "Can you believe this?" she asked, looking up at him. "All these years we thought we were behind, but we've had this gift all along." Daniel nodded slowly. "A gift for war. Not sure if that's something to be proud of." "It's not just about war," Lisa argued. "It's about protecting others. If what they're saying is true, we might be the only ones who can stop these Vorax from destroying everything." Over the next few days, Earth's leaders met continuously. The decision wasn't easy, but in the end, the choice was clear. Humanity would join the Concordat. Within weeks, alien technology began arriving on Earth. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock to understand and adapt it. Military personnel started training with advanced combat simulators, consistently achieving scores that amazed their alien observers. Daniel found himself working closely with both the aliens and Lisa, who was studying why humans excelled so naturally at warfare. Together, they began to understand that humanity's troubled past, centuries of conflict and competition, had unknowingly prepared them for this moment. 1 month after first contact, Daniel stood on the observation deck of Earth's first faster-than-light capable military vessel. Lisa stood beside him, both of them watching as the stars stretched into streams of light. "Ready to be a space war god?" she asked with a small smile. Daniel shook his head. "I just hope we're ready for what's coming. Being good at fighting doesn't make us invincible." "No," Lisa agreed, "but it makes us humanity. And right now, that's exactly what the galaxy needs." As their ship accelerated towards the frontier of human space, neither of them could have predicted just how right they were. Humanity was about to prove itself on a galactic stage, and the universe would never be the same. The stars streaked by outside the window, carrying humanity towards its destiny as defenders of peace in a troubled galaxy. The age of human space war gods had begun, whether they were ready for it or not. 3 months after Earth joined the Concordat, the situation at the galactic frontier grew worse. Admiral Mary Thompson stood on the bridge of Earth's first advanced warship, studying the holographic display of Vorax movement patterns. Her gray eyes narrowed as she watched the red dots of enemy ships pushing deeper into Concordat space. "They're attacking trading routes now," said Captain Peter Wright, pointing to a cluster of recent attacks. "The Concordat's merchant ships don't stand a chance." Mary nodded grimly. The Vorax weren't just warriors, they were hunters. Their ships looked like massive, metallic predators, all sharp angles and weapon ports. Unlike the elegant vessels of the Concordat, Vorax ships were built for one purpose: war. Back on Earth, the military was preparing for what seemed inevitable. Training centers worked around the clock, teaching soldiers to use alien technology. The results continued to amaze their Concordat allies. Humans weren't just good at combat, they seemed to have an almost supernatural gift for it. In one of these training centers, Lisa Bennett watched as a group of pilots ran combat simulations. She had been studying human performance for months now, and the data was stunning. The pilots moved their ships in ways the aliens had never considered, using maneuvers that seemed impossible. "Another perfect run," said Commander Alan Foster, removing his simulation helmet. Sweat dripped down his face, but he was grinning. "These alien ships respond better than anything we've ever built." Lisa checked her tablet. "You just broke every record the Concordat had for that scenario." Again. Before Alan could respond, alarms blared through the facility. Red lights flashed as an emergency broadcast filled every screen. The Vorax had launched a major offensive, destroying 3 Concordat colonies in a single day. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Thompson called an emergency meeting with Earth's military leadership and their Concordat allies. The holographic conference room was filled with both human and alien faces, all wearing expressions of concern. "The Vorax are moving faster than we predicted," said the silvery Concordat representative. "Our defensive lines are failing. We need human ships on the frontier immediately." Mary studied the battle projections. "Our crews are still training. We've only got 5 ships ready for combat. 5 human ships are worth 50 of ours in battle, the reptilian alien argued. We've seen your simulation results. You understand warfare in ways we never could. The decision was made. Earth would send its first combat fleet to defend the Concordat's borders. Admiral Thompson would lead them personally, with Captain Wright as her second in command. As the ships prepared to depart, Lisa rushed to the launch bay. She found Alan suiting up with the other pilots. "Be careful out there," she said, handing him a data chip. "I've analyzed all our combat data. The Vorax have never faced anything like human pilots before. Use that to your advantage." Alan tucked the chip into his suit. "Any other advice from our resident scientist?" Lisa smiled despite her worry. "Just remember, you're not just good at this. You were born for it. All of humanity was." The first human combat fleet jumped into action 3 days later. They arrived at a crucial supply route, just as a Vorax attack force was moving in. What happened next would become legend throughout the galaxy. Admiral Thompson's tactical decisions seemed to border on precognition. She positioned her ships in ways that made no sense to the Concordat observers until the moment of engagement. Then, everything became clear. The human fleet moved like dancers in a deadly ballet. They predicted and countered every Vorax move before it happened. Fighter pilots pulled off maneuvers that defied conventional space combat doctrine. The Vorax, faced with an enemy they couldn't predict or understand, fell into chaos. "This is impossible," breathed one of the Concordat observers as they watched the battle unfold. "They're fighting like they can see the future." Back on the bridge, Mary allowed herself a small smile. "No, we're just doing what humans have always done. Adapting, surviving, protecting what matters." The battle ended with a decisive human victory. Not a single Concordat merchant ship was lost, and the Vorax fleet retreated in disarray. But this was just the beginning. News of the human victory spread rapidly through Concordat space. For the first time since the Vorax appeared, hope began to grow. But with that hope came a new development. The Vorax began specifically targeting human ships. In her lab on Earth, Lisa received the battle data and gasped. The neural patterns of human crews during combat were unlike anything she'd ever seen. Their brains weren't just processing combat information. They were evolving, adapting in real time to an entirely new form of warfare. "We're not just naturally good at this," she muttered, studying the readings. "We're getting better. Every battle, every engagement, we're learning and improving at rates that shouldn't be possible." As more human ships joined the fleet, the Vorax found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand. Human tactics were unpredictable, human reflexes too quick, human strategies too complex. Admiral Thompson stood on her bridge, watching as reports came in from across the frontier. The Vorax were pulling back, regrouping, trying to understand this new threat. But she knew they would return, stronger and more determined than ever. "Send word to Earth," she ordered Captain Wright. "Tell them to speed up training. The real war hasn't even started yet." As her message raced across space, Mary looked out at the stars. Humanity had proven itself in its first real test, but she knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had been called the gods of war, and the price of that title would be paid in blood and starfire. The space around Colony 7 erupted in explosions as Commander John Phillips led his task force against the largest Vorax fleet they'd encountered yet. His small group of 5 human ships faced off against 20 Vorax vessels, but he wasn't worried. Experience had taught him that numbers meant little when humans entered the fight. "Target their lead ships," he ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Use pattern Delta. Let's show them why they should have stayed in their own territory." The human ships moved in perfect coordination, executing maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. Among them, fighter pilot Amy Russell pushed her craft into impossible turns, leading a squadron that danced through enemy fire like water through rocks. "They're trying to box us in," Amy reported, spinning her fighter through a gap between enemy ships, just like the simulations predicted. John smiled. The Vorax were still using their old tactics, unable to adapt to humanity's style of warfare. Their rigid, predictable patterns made them vulnerable to human creativity and instinct. Back on Earth, Lisa Bennett watched the battle through real-time data feeds. She sat in her lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing neural patterns of the human crews in combat. What she saw amazed her. Their brains are literally rewiring themselves during battle, she muttered, making notes. They're processing information faster than any species we've ever encountered. The battle above Colony 7 turned into a masterclass in human combat superiority. Amy's fighters struck from impossible angles, while John's larger ships moved in patterns that trapped and isolated the Vorax vessels. Within hours, the enemy fleet retreated, leaving behind only debris and another victory for humanity. But the Vorax weren't finished. They began adapting, learning, trying to understand their new enemies. Reports came in from across the frontier. The Vorax were specifically targeting human ships now, recognizing them as the greatest threat to their expansion. On the civilian side, Catherine Martinez, one of Earth's top fighter pilots, was busy teaching new combat maneuvers to both human and alien students. The alien pilots struggled to grasp concepts that seemed natural to their human counterparts. "Don't think about the moves," Catherine explained to a frustrated Concordat pilot. "Feel them. Your ship is part of you. The battlefield is a dance, and you need to know the steps before the music starts." The alien pilot's features twisted in confusion. "But how can you know the steps before they happen?" Catherine smiled. "We don't know them. We create them. That's what makes humans different. We don't just follow patterns, we make new ones." In orbit around Mars, a new type of ship was being built. The Concordat had finally accepted that their traditional vessel designs didn't suit human combat styles. These new ships were hybrid creations, combining alien technology with human intuition for warfare. John Phillips stood in the observation deck, watching the construction. "How many can we build?" he asked the project leader. "With the Concordat's help, we can have a full fleet ready in 3 months," the engineer replied. "They're faster, more maneuverable, and designed specifically for human combat tactics." The need for these new ships became clear when the Vorax launched their biggest offensive yet. They struck simultaneously at multiple Concordat worlds, clearly hoping to overwhelm the human defenders through sheer numbers. Amy Russell found herself leading a desperate defense of a Concordat colony. Her fighters were outnumbered 10-1, but she remembered Catherine's teachings. The battlefield was a dance, and humans were born knowing the rhythm. "Follow my lead," she called to her squadron. "Show them why they call us the war gods." What followed was a display of combat prowess that would be studied for generations. Amy's squadron moved in ways that seemed impossible, using the colony's orbital debris as cover, appearing from blind spots the Vorax never considered could be used. During the battle, Lisa's research team made a breakthrough. They discovered that human brains were processing combat information at speeds 40% faster than any known species. More importantly, this ability seemed to be improving with each engagement. "We're not just naturally good at warfare," Lisa explained to the Joint Human Concordat Council. "We're evolving to become better at it. Each battle teaches us more than any other species can learn in years of training." The Vorax learned this lesson the hard way. Their offensive failed at every point where they encountered human ships. Their losses were staggering, their tactics useless against an enemy that seemed to rewrite the rules of combat with every engagement. John Phillips stood on his bridge, watching the last Vorax ships retreat from Colony 7. "Send word to Earth," he ordered. "Tell them we're ready to take the fight to enemy territory." It's time the Vorax learned what happens when you push humanity too far. As the message was sent, Amy landed her fighter in the carrier's bay. Her hands were shaking from adrenaline, but her mind was already analyzing the battle, finding new patterns, new possibilities. "How do you do it?" a Concordat engineer asked her as she climbed out of her cockpit. "How do you know what to do in the middle of chaos?" Amy looked at the alien, remembering her first combat simulation, how natural it had felt. "We don't see chaos," she explained. "We see opportunities. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us human." Across the galaxy, the story spread. Tales of human ships moving like ghosts through space, of pilots who could predict enemy movements before they happened, of commanders who turned certain defeat into impossible victory. Humanity had been tested in the fires of space combat, and they had emerged as something new. The gods of war their allies needed them to be. The Vorax were learning that power wasn't just about numbers or technology. Sometimes it was about the warrior's spirit that humans had carried in their DNA since they first looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. Dr. William Harris stood before a mixed audience of humans and aliens, his presentation showing the latest innovations in space combat strategy. The large hall at the newly established Terran Combat Academy was filled to capacity, with representatives from every Concordat species eager to learn from humanity's growing expertise. "The key isn't just about better weapons or faster ships," William explained, pointing to a holographic battle simulation. "It's about understanding how different species can work together. Each of us has unique strengths. Combined properly, we become unstoppable." In the 6 months since humans had joined the war, combat doctrine had evolved dramatically. The rigid, predictable patterns of traditional space warfare had given way to fluid, adaptive strategies that merged the best qualities of all allied species. Above Earth's moon, the newest class of hybrid warships underwent their final tests. These vessels represented the perfect blend of Concordat technology and human combat intuition. Their design incorporated features that would have seemed insane a year ago, but now made perfect sense to their human crews. "The ships think like we do now," said Commander Betty Martinez, running her hand along the smooth wall of her new command vessel. "They anticipate our moves before we make them. It's like they're extensions of our bodies." The Concordat engineers had finally stopped trying to understand how humans fought and instead focused on building ships that could keep up with their natural combat instincts. The results were stunning. In her research facility, Lisa Bennett made another breakthrough. She had been studying the neural patterns of human crews during combat situations, and what she found changed everything they thought they knew about human potential. "Look at this," she said, showing her findings to Admiral Thompson. "When humans enter combat, their brains don't just process information faster. They enter a state we've never seen before. It's like they're operating on a different level of consciousness." The scans showed human minds lighting up in patterns that defied conventional understanding. During battle, human crews weren't just fighting. They were evolving, adapting, becoming something more than they had been before. On the front lines, these changes were becoming more apparent. Human ships moved with increasing precision and creativity, developing tactics that seemed impossible until they succeeded. The Vorax found themselves facing an enemy that grew stronger with each encounter. Dr. William Harris worked closely with alien combat specialists to develop new training programs. Unlike traditional military doctrine, these programs focused on instinct and adaptation rather than rigid rules and formations. "Forget everything you know about space combat," he told his students. "The old rules don't apply anymore. We're writing new ones every day." The results were transformative. Even non-human crews began showing improved combat performance when they adopted human-inspired tactics. The Concordat's military effectiveness increased dramatically across all fronts. In a remote star system, Betty Martinez led a joint human-alien fleet against a Vorax stronghold. The battle that followed demonstrated just how far space combat had evolved. "All ships, execute Pattern Omega," Betty commanded. "Remember your training. Flow like water, strike like lightning." The combined fleet moved with unprecedented coordination. Human ships darted through the chaos, creating opportunities that their alien allies exploited perfectly. The Vorax, still struggling to adapt to human tactics, found themselves facing an enemy that fought like nothing they'd ever encountered. Lisa's research team monitored the battle from Earth, collecting data that would help refine their understanding of human combat potential. What they saw amazed them. The neural synchronization between human crews is off the charts, one researcher reported. It's like they're sharing a single consciousness during battle. This phenomenon, which they named combat resonance, became the focus of intensive study. The ability of human crews to achieve this state of heightened awareness and coordination seemed to be unique among all known species. Back at the Academy, William introduced new training simulations that helped other species understand and adapt to human combat styles. While they couldn't replicate the natural abilities that made humans such effective warriors, they could learn to complement them. "We're not trying to turn you into humans," he explained to his alien students. "We're teaching you to work with us in ways that make both of us stronger." The new combat doctrine spread rapidly through Concordat space. Ships were modified, crews retrained, and entire fleets reorganized according to human principles of warfare. The results spoke for themselves. Vorax advances were not just stopped but reversed. Betty's fleet proved the effectiveness of these changes when they successfully defended 3 Concordat worlds simultaneously, using tactics that would have been considered impossible months earlier. "The key is unpredictability," she explained in her after-action report. "The moment you become predictable in space combat, you become vulnerable. Humans understand this instinctively." Lisa's research continued to reveal new aspects of humanity's combat potential. Each battle provided more data, showing how human minds adapted and evolved to meet new challenges. "We're not just good at fighting," she told the Concordat Science Council. "We're naturally designed to revolutionize warfare itself. Every engagement teaches us something new, makes us better, faster, more effective." As the war continued, the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity transformed space combat from a rigid, predictable exercise into an art form. The old ways of fighting were giving way to something new, something that combined the best of all species into a force that even the Vorax couldn't stand against. William stood at his lecture podium, looking out at another class of eager students. "We're not just teaching you to fight," he said. "We're teaching you to evolve. That's the real secret of human combat success. We never stop learning, never stop adapting, never stop improving." The evolution of warfare had begun, and humanity was leading the way into a future where combat was more than just violence. It was a dance of ships among the stars, a symphony of strategy and instinct, a new way of defending the galaxy against those who would destroy it. The massive fleet hung in space like a constellation of artificial stars. At its center, Fleet Commander Susan Cooper stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as ships from a dozen different species moved into formation. This was humanity's moment. The final push to end the Vorax threat once and for all. "All ships report ready," said her executive officer, Richard Cole. "The Vorax have no idea we're here." Susan nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. After a year of war, everything had led to this moment. The Vorax had retreated to their home system, gathering their remaining forces for one last stand. They didn't expect their enemies to find them so quickly or to strike so boldly. On Earth, Lisa Bennett monitored the situation from the new Galactic Military Command Center. Her research had helped shape this final battle plan, incorporating everything they had learned about human combat abilities. "The neural synchronization is perfect," she reported to the assembled Concordat leaders. "Every human crew is operating at peak efficiency. They're ready." The last year had transformed humanity's role in the galaxy. What began as a surprising discovery of their natural combat abilities had evolved into something more. Humans hadn't just mastered space warfare, they had revolutionized it. Susan gave the signal, and the fleet jumped into action. Ships moved with impossible grace, following patterns that looked like chaos, but were actually an intricate dance of destruction. Human vessels led the charge, creating openings that their alien allies exploited with devastating effect. The Vorax responded with everything they had, but they were fighting an enemy they still couldn't understand. Human tactics changed constantly, adapting to each new situation in ways that defied prediction. "They're trying to regroup," Richard reported, watching the enemy movements. "Standard Vorax response pattern." Susan smiled. "And that's why they'll lose. They never learn to let go of their old ways." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. Human commanders coordinated their forces with almost supernatural precision, while their alien allies executed supporting maneuvers that would have been impossible a year ago. Back on Earth, the Galactic Military Academy was already preparing for the post-war era. Alien species from across the galaxy sent their best warriors to learn from human instructors. The demand was so high that new facilities were being built on Mars and Venus. Professor Andrew Clark, a former fighter pilot, addressed his latest class of alien students. "The first lesson of human combat doctrine is simple: forget everything you think you know about warfare. The only constant is change." In orbit above Earth, construction continued on the next generation of warships. These vessels incorporated everything humans had learned about space combat, designed to enhance their natural abilities rather than constrain them. The final battle reached its climax as Susan's fleet pushed toward the Vorax homeworld. The enemy's defensive lines crumbled before tactics they couldn't counter, strategies they couldn't predict. "They're sending out a surrender signal," Richard announced, his voice tight with emotion. "They're actually giving up." The news spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. The Vorax, the terror of the Concordat, had been defeated. More importantly, they had been beaten so thoroughly that they chose surrender over extinction. In the aftermath, humanity's reputation soared to new heights. Every species in the galaxy wanted human military advisors, human-designed ships, human combat training. Earth became the center of a new era of galactic defense. Lisa published her final research papers on human combat abilities. Her findings showed that humans hadn't just used their natural talents, they had evolved them, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in space warfare. "We didn't just win a war," she wrote. "We changed the very nature of combat itself. The question now is, what will we do with this power?" The answer came from the newly formed Galactic Defense Council. Humanity would serve as protectors, teaching others to defend themselves while maintaining peace across the stars. It was a role that suited their abilities and their nature. Susan Cooper, now promoted to Grand Admiral, stood before the council to present humanity's vision for the future. "We were called gods of war," she said, "but our true strength isn't in fighting. It's in teaching, protecting, and bringing peace through strength." The Vorax, under strict supervision, began to learn new ways. Their younger generation showed particular interest in human combat philosophy, seeing in it a path to something greater than mere conquest. Andrew Clark's academy graduated its first class of alien students, each of them transformed by their exposure to human combat doctrine. They returned to their homeworlds as teachers, spreading what they had learned throughout the galaxy. "The age of rigid warfare is over," Andrew told them at graduation. "You carry with you the seeds of a new way, a human way, of protecting what matters." Across the stars, humanity's influence continued to grow. Their ships patrolled trade routes, their advisors helped strengthen planetary defenses, and their academies trained new generations of defenders. Lisa Bennett, reviewing data from the final battle, made one last discovery. The neural patterns of human crews had evolved beyond anything she had initially measured. Humanity hadn't just mastered space combat, they had transcended it. "We became gods of war," she wrote in her journal, "not because we were born to fight, but because we were born to adapt, to learn, to protect." That's our true legacy to the galaxy. As Susan Cooper looked out at the peaceful stars from her flagship, she understood what that legacy meant. Humanity had found its place in the cosmos not as conquerors or mere warriors, but as guardians of a peace won through understanding, innovation, and the courage to change. The gods of war had become the protectors of peace, and the galaxy was better for it. And so began a new chapter in human history, not as the species that was good at fighting, but as the race that taught the galaxy a better way to defend itself. The stars shone brighter now, safer under the watchful eyes of humanity and its allies, united in their commitment to a peace protected by those who had mastered the art of war but chosen the path of defense.